Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
Hey guys, how are we?
Holy shit, you're a fucking monster, dude.
Filling in very nicely.
By the way, so D, I went to Pat's show a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
It was really, it's always unbelievable to not see someone for a while and see the improvements when you know they're putting their head to, like you, like Pat, like out of everyone that I know, anyone that I know on the planet, like I know I'm dedicated with this stuff, right? Like you're as dedicated as anyone I've ever met. Like I don't think anyone's going to put, I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's going to put more effort into getting to their body comp goals and is going to literally be targeted, focused, and not let any distractions get in their way. It's like, no, it's actually like, I don't say this to anyone. It's actually inspiring. It really is. It's like, it's fucking amazing. And I was genuinely proud of you, man. I was up there. I was honored to be asked to even show up. I put it in my calendar a month before, literally. And we showed up and we cheered like a bunch of kids in the crowd, me and Marcos, and, you know, just seeing the package that you delivered and then hearing the critiques and hearing your approach. There was nothing down. Like, you won your division. Like, fucking Pat, you weren't a bodybuilder 5 years ago.
Right.
You're a bodybuilder now. You came in, you won your division, but then also to see and hear, these are the things that need to be worked on, where most people, I'm sorry for the rant, but I got to give you praise on this.
No, dude, it's awesome.
No. But like, you know, I was on with one of my challengers the other day, and they're like, I was doing an exercise, and I just was struggling with it, and I'm just frustrated, and I'm like, the struggle's the best part. Like, I've never not struggled on an exercise. Like, it's, you know what it is? It's a fucking tug of war. I feel like training is like that game when you were a kid, when you just grab each other's hands and start like, you know, that's training.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's this constant fucking tug of war of trying to like annihilate a muscle while being smart about it and understanding that, like, oh yeah, we could just do volume until I can't move tomorrow. And then what good's that going to do if I'm injured, right? So it really is, bodybuilding is an art on so many levels. The posing piece, Derek, the training piece, the nutrition piece, it's like golf. It really is. Like golf, you could be good off the tee, but dog shit with your mid irons. You could be great in the bunker and then shitty with your putter. It's like there's so many different elements to golf, and bodybuilding reminds you of that.
I mean, there's so many things I want to talk about with what you just said.
I mean, I'm fucking charged up, dude. I'm charged up because even looking at you right now, thinking about the days that we trade in here, our relationship, the three of us, no fucking intro here. Like this, no, I want to get at it. Like this is a new passion of yours, where 5-6 years ago it was like strongman and it was like other things and maybe power. And like, it's interesting to hear, like even Frank Seppi turning around and being like, holy shit, his legs, like that's from all that heavy, like real heavy shit. Not like 15 years of doing like 15s and 20 reps. Like you were picking up heavy shit. I'll leave it alone now.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you. Like, that's amazing to hear that. And, you know, it was so cool for me to have you there. And for that dinner that we had after that, like,
special,
because, you know, I had just been in my own world for months going into that thing. Like, you know, I hadn't been out to eat, period, in a long time. I hadn't really done anything in like a social group in a long time. And so that, just that after effect, that experience was like, man, it was like nutrition for my heart, like for my soul, to be around really positive, amazing people. And like that environment, you know, that was a very special night.
It actually didn't even really matter what you ordered, because you like looked at the menu, and like after a bodybuilding show, Derek, everyone's like so thoughtful of what they want. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to have pizza. Derek's like, give me the menu. He's like, this sounds great. And he just was like laser focused on being at a table with people that he really enjoyed their company. And it was a special group. Even your coach, who I never met, we sat there rapping back and forth, like just a great dude. And everyone, like you could just see Marcos is like, every time I'm around Marcos, I'm just like, God, if I was in the city working next to this guy. He'd be one of my closest friends. Like you're just, there's a reason why everyone was there, but everyone was there in full support of you. But do me fair, like this is what I want to, Derek, what I really want to talk about today is bodybuilding doesn't get enough credit. Like there is, when it comes down to dedication, you said something to me that night. You said, the other day I was cutting vegetables and I'm thinking, I know, like I haven't been on stage, but I've done prep, and you almost like in a way were explaining it like you started going a little crazy. Like you're cutting vegetables, thinking to yourself, oh my God, here I am cutting vegetables again. And it's like, it's the same thing I've been doing for the last 16 weeks. And it's the exact same meal I've been eating. It's, talk about it. It really is crazy.
Well, yeah, I did a show 2 weeks before the one that you were at. And I was a little too fat for that show. And it's like, it's so interesting to say that because like regular people that have never done bodybuilding, they're like, what? But like, dude, if your hamstrings aren't in and your glutes aren't striated, you're too fat for bodybuilding. And Ethan went to that show. He helped me. He worked with me. And immediately, like when I got off the stage and I was like, well, what happened? He was like, your conditioning wasn't good enough for them to consider placing you, period. And, I love when people give me that kind of feedback. It was just like, oh, okay. Like I thought I was better than I was. And he's like, yeah, I know you got another one in 2 weeks. My recommendation to you is get right on the diet as soon as you finish this show. Like when you go home, right back to it. Okay. And just, it's going to be, if you want to do well in the next one, it's going to be 2 weeks of punishment, And I was like, got it, dude. But like, I worked my ass off to get to the first one, but the feeling of standing on the diagonal, knowing that I didn't place and it didn't go that well. And I was like, that was in my head. And I was saying to myself, I don't ever want to feel that again. Like, I don't like working hard for something and getting punked. And, but I remember like being at home after that, covered in spray tan, the whole thing, sitting at the counter, just chopping peppers and mushrooms and broccoli. And what was the other damn thing that was over and over? It's like I'm a few weeks away from it now. So
Was
it's
it
almost
asparagus?
like, what was it again? Like, I don't even know. But like, it was this weird, like, oh my God, dude. Like, they always say like before you reach enlightenment, like you chop wood, carry water, sweep the floor, sort of a thing. And then once you're there, you chop wood, carry water, sweep the floor. And that was going through my head. I was like, is this good? Is this bad? Like, where am I right now? And at a certain point, it was almost like, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm just chopping vegetables. This is actually kind of soothing in this moment in time. And chopping vegetables is kind of what this is my life at this point. Like, this is kind of like this is what it takes. This is what's involved. And, it was like, I worked harder in those last 2 weeks for that and put myself through a level of suffering that I have never reached before. Never. And I've done some really hard things, including the first time trying to go through the summer sprint program that Derek put together. Like, yeah. I was really overweight for that. And I legitimately ran myself into bilateral tibial fractures that summer and kept running. You know what I mean? Like, I just kept running and for a couple more weeks on it until I literally couldn't push off at the starting line. I just fell over and it was like, okay, I guess this is as far as that goes. But that didn't even come close to those last 2 weeks. It was like, all the MMA training and prep never came close to those last 2 weeks. Like, I reached a point the Tuesday before that contest was actually the hardest point of the whole thing, where I had, had 0 carbs in 48 hours and I had to walk to the grocery store. And as I was walking to the grocery store, like my vision was messed up, like my whole perception was off. Like, and I was just thinking to myself, like, what happens if I fall over right now, like into the sidewalk street area? Like, what, like, Because I don't know, I've never felt like this in my whole life. And it was like, well, I guess somebody will probably come along and collect me, like, and it was like this back and forth
Start
thing.
going, you start going a bit, Derek, you literally start going a bit psychotic. And people don't I think a lot of people don't understand, like when you start losing the ability to think and move. I'll never forget, I was on 57th and Lex one day, and I had prep in I 2 or 3 more days of prep for a cover I was doing. This was close to 11 years ago when I actually did a true bodybuilding prep with like dehydrating. And I went through, my buddy Michael Hearn helped me with that, who's not, I love him, but he's not normal either. And I remember stopping on Lexington and grabbing onto a sign, and just the next thing you know, I don't know how long I was there for, 10 or 15 minutes. I had to stop. I had to catch my breath. My head was going all over the place. I had zero energy. I felt awful, awful. And I got into the gym that I had to train at. And I remember going to the bathroom and walking out. There was a bodybuilder there, and he's like, "You look dry. What are you preparing for?" And I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't even answer. Derek, but
Yeah.
it is, I'm going to kick it to you now, but it is, it's a much different world.
Yeah,
I've
like
had lots of, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask, like you talked about other athletic pursuits you've had. What is the difference? Like what is is it the deprivation? Is it the mental side? Is it the precision? Like say preparing for a fight or preparing to play, what to be a baseball player or a football player? Like how would you characterize the difference?
I can't remember the book I was reading, but part of the book went into the records that are in breath holding. And it was comparing the time of deep dive breath holding versus there's another one where people literally are in a shallow pool and they just stick their face in the pool. And the time differential is gigantic. Like when people are standing in a shallow pool and just put their face in the water, they hold their breath for much longer than the people that actually dive deep under the water. Uh, Unfortunately, there's way more deaths in the group that's in the shallow pool. Okay. And the thought is that, well, you don't have to really physically perform anything when you're in the shallow pool. You're just bringing yourself as far as your mind is willing to tolerate. In bodybuilding, you don't really have to perform like an athletic feat necessarily. Like, don't get me wrong, the posing is difficult, but you could be kind of bad at posing and still win if you're just more muscular and more shredded and suffered more to get there. And so I think that's the difference is like in MMA, I had to get to 154 and a half pounds, which was horrible, but I couldn't be so depleted that I couldn't fight. You know, same thing with strongman. I had to get under 175 pounds, but it was for a 2-day contest. Nationals and worlds was always 2 days. So it was like, well, I have to have enough reserve. And I think the brain is unconsciously monitoring that stuff. Whereas with bodybuilding, you literally go until there's no gas left in the tank. All the other ones, you got to hold some gas in the tank. So it's just your willingness to see how far you can go psychologically, emotionally. What is the tolerance point that's going to break? And like I was thinking about it on that walk to the grocery store I was describing, where I was like, is this really that bad? Like how bad is this? Like this is the worst I've ever felt in my life, but is it really that bad? And I started thinking like the thought process just got really interesting. It was like picturing slaves in Egypt, just like getting whipped, like trying to move blocks for the Great Pyramid.
Malnourished for two
Yeah.
months. Yeah.
People in concentration camps, like people being brought over from Africa on that, like those boats where they're just stuffed in those tiny spaces for like, 15, 20 days, however long it would take to go across the Atlantic. And I was like, I don't think this is actually that bad. Like, this can't be that bad. This is just the worst I've ever known. And and so that gave me like enough energy to take like another like 45 steps that were pretty good. And then like the reality, like, no, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. Like, I can barely walk right now. I have like zero glycogen in my body. Like I don't, but it was this back and forth between that. Like this is bad, this isn't that bad, you know? And so a lot of it just became like this, like devil on one shoulder, angel on the other one. And the internal voice, like getting to know myself was that was the real deal part of it, where it's like, hey, it would be okay to have 50 grams of carbs today. You can have a little bit extra in this meal. And then the other voice would be like, that's not the plan. That's not what you said you were going to do. Are you going to follow what you said you are going to do? Like, who are you as a person? Are you the person that gives up and gives in? Or are you the person that does what they say they were going to do? And that conversation just happened in my head over and over and over and over again. And I don't think I ever gave in to the shortcut, you know?
Thank God you didn't. Thank God. I'm gonna cut in here. Thank God you didn't, because you know as well as I do, even if you showed up on stage looking the same or better,
Yeah,
that would have affected you. That giving in sometimes, or giving in a lot of times. I'm a believer in, like, if you're going for a run and you say you're going to run 3 miles, 5 miles, like, finish. I don't care if you're vomiting as you're running, finish. Unless it's physically impossible to finish. Like, these are lessons that I feel like this is that mental toughness piece. And these are things that I think a lot of people are lacking. This is never going to get easy. When you're 10 years older, in your 50s or in your 60s, the way you train, it's not going to get easy. Maybe the exercises change. You know as well as I do. You want to
yeah,
be doing now, you want to be training the same way 20 years from now than you are now. That's almost a goal of yours in life. It's a goal of mine.
absolutely. Yep.
Why? Like, why? Like, why do you think, like, what has drawn you to this so much?
I don't know, some part of me, I'm actually watching the on Netflix Starting Five,
Yeah,
and
saw it.
they were showing like the guy that trained Jason Tatum, and like he had very specific things that he said, like, I won't take you on as a young athlete or as a client unless you love basketball. Like you have to love this on a level that's hard to describe, because there's going to be a lot of things that are painful about this process. Like being an NBA talent is hard. Like you're going to be on the road, you're going to be away from your family, you're going to face the media, you're going to deal with difficult teammates, difficult opponents. Like everything about this is hard. And if you don't love basketball, you are not going to be in this for a long time. And, they got LeBron in it, they got Tatum, they got these guys that have been doing this for a while at a super high level. And a lot of them are coming from these like single mom families, you know? And I think that they faced a lot of adversity as kids and probably had an outlet in sports. And I know for me, that is the case. You know what I mean? Like I had a lot of difficult stuff as a kid, family wise, and sports became the outlet, the escape for me. Like, and, just I think back to that, and man, I remember growing up, and when it was nice weather, it was like I loved it because it was time to play baseball. And there was nothing better for me than baseball. And like the fresh cut grass, this blue sky, the smell, the feel of the ball, the glove, the bat, like that contact of connecting with the ball, like the feel of the ball coming off my fingertips. It was like while I was on that field, man, like that was perfection. And Massachusetts, Cape Cod, and for the most of the year is cold and dark and wet. And it's just like, oh man. And I grew up in the 80s. I can just remember Celtics, Lakers, and always watching that on the finals and seeing LA. There'd be the Lakers girls and the palm trees and the sunshine. And it was always like cold and dark and miserable here. And like just a tough situation. And so like this idea of sports and like this escape. And then as a kid, also like, ESPN used to have those fitness shows on. And I used to watch those right after sports.
Corey Everson, remember all that?
Yes.
Yes.
Dude, Galad in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You had body shaping that was also in Hawaii. And it was like, it was an escape. to me. I think like almost this like idea that, hey, if I train and push myself, like these are the people associated with this. And they live in these amazing places, and there's like beautiful girls, and they're all fun, and they all seem to have great energy. And that's the end point for me, like this escape from what I understand as reality. And so I really do think that got into my psychology quite a bit. And really, I got positive feedback as from sports and from training when I was a kid. You know, that was like one of the only places I got positive feedback in my
It's also
life.
it's also one of the only things I feel like when I hear you speak about this, it's something that you can. There's so many things in life, Pat, that we can't control, right? You know, we just
And
can't
yeah.
control so many things. Like I'll never forget when I was a young kid, my father put a newspaper clipping. He would put every morning I'd wake up. My dad worked in catering, so he'd be up super late at night, and he wouldn't get home till 2, 3 in the morning. And he had like Mondays and Tuesdays off. But 4 or 5 nights mornings a week, I would wake up, and there would be Newsday articles on my counter, like 17-year-old dies in drunk driving accident, right? Ken Griffey Jr. strikes out 4 times in a game, right? And there's so many things that like, and I remember reading these stories, and the 17-year-old was hit by by a drunk driver out of his control, right? Griffey Jr., probably one of the best hitters I've seen in the last 30 years. I mean, arguably maybe 3, 4, 5, top 5, whatever it is. Striking out 3 or 4 times in a game. I think it was 4. I mean, seriously, like there's just so
Mm-hmm.
much. What you're talking about right now, I think part of the reason why you love it so much is because you know what you put into it is not
Mm-hmm.
only what you're going to get out of it, here, but what you're going to get out of it here. You not giving in and getting those 50 extra gram of carbs showed you you're on another level. And I think the way that you live, that's really important.
Yeah, I think that what got me into it is not the same thing that's keeping me into it.
Right.
You know, I think that I was searching for anything positive in my life as a kid, anything. And, I didn't really have a father. So a lot of times coaches became sort of this surrogate father thing. And I always wanted to like make these guys impressed and proud. So like, and coaches are usually the guys that were the gym rats themselves. You know what I mean? They value that. So they really valued me and the effort I would put into everything. And like, I just felt that was always something where it was like I gained that respect from people that I respected and wanted in my life from trying hard, training hard, paying attention to the little details, focus, all of those little things where like, coaches loved me. And it was because like I think there was a lot of this need that I had. Like I always look at it, why does anyone do anything? Because they need to desperately, like otherwise it just doesn't happen. I've always believed in pressure and time constraints and needs. And if you need it, man, you'll move mountains to get something.
Right.
So I think that got me into it. And I think also a lot of spite and anger in the beginning. Like I always felt like, look, man, I'm as smart as any other guy. I'm as athletic as any other guy growing up. But like for whatever reason, I always feel like I'm not part of the in group. I'm not part of the crowd. I'm not, and like I don't have a good house. I don't have a father. I don't have any of these things that you've got. But when I see your ass on the field, I'm gonna punish you the whole time. I'm gonna
Right.
make you wish you never stepped in between these lines.
Right.
Because while we're here, you don't have any advantages compared to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Outside of this, you're gonna have every advantage. But in here, this is where we're equals, dude. And so I think that like, I've consistently been someone where if I get upset about something, I'll go on an absolute mission to like, the person might not even know I'm on a vendetta against them. But in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna fucking show this person. And
Right.
even if it takes 5 years of me being in the dark and working on something, by the end of this, like I'm gonna leave a mark and they're gonna know they never should have said that about me. They never should have challenged me. So I think a lot of that is in my history, but where it has changed has been what you're talking about. personal upside that I've experienced of following through on the hard things that cause me to reach this conflict point and choosing the harder path. And when I do that, my self-esteem grows, my integrity grows, my personal accountability grows. And what I've come to learn in life is that that is the greatest gift that I've personally come to know and experience. No money has ever beaten that, no anything. Like when I actually know that like that was hard as hell and I did it, and it took everything in me to step up and do something that's more challenging than I've ever done before. God, that is the best personal feeling I've ever had.
So now that you've invested this energy, like emotional energy, physical energy, all of this time into this pursuit, does it make it harder to now go, can I do something else? Can I leave this? Or do you have to keep pushing? Like it's like the person who runs a marathon, like, hey, run a
Yeah.
marathon. Well, now I want to get sub 3 hours. Now I want to get whatever. Do you feel that way? Like I got to keep pushing this? Or do you feel like you could do something else and maybe take those lessons and apply to something else? Like let's use Arnold Schwarzenegger as an example, and
Yeah.
like let's go into acting or politics, or how do you see this going from here?
I'm gonna push this thing way further, you know. Um, it's like I loved the sprint training, but I also looked forward and I was like, well, how far can I really go? Like I'm a 40-year-old 5'6" white guy. That's not exactly descriptive of like best case scenario for being really, really good at this particular endeavor, you know? So with this with bodybuilding though, I actually like it's funny because I did the sprint training, I followed a diet, and after a couple of years of doing that, I looked at myself and I was like, holy shit, I look better than I've ever looked in my entire life. I kind of look like I could step on stage. Like, what the hell is this even? And it was sort of like, I think that's probably a smarter approach if I actually want to compete in something. Like I've ended over here at this place that I didn't really intend to. I'm definitely not going to beat anybody that's actually fast in a race, but I probably could, if I focus in this other area, get pretty far. Like let me see what I can actually do. And I do believe in like cool stories, and I shared with Don what I actually want to do. And I try not to vocalize it too much because I do believe that like sometimes vocalizing very particular goals takes away some of the magic of them. Like it's almost like I want to keep this thing like close to my heart for me. But yeah, I've got like I got into this with a 7-year plan of starting at 43 and thinking like, boy, I'll tell you, if I can pull this off at 50, that's a hell of a story. It's a hell of a
Yeah.
story for me. It's a hell of a story for anybody. And, I think it would be something that would get me, not just get me out of bed, something that would really drive me in life, and probably a million secondary things that I never even thought about will also kind of come along with that ride, you know? Just being on a crazy mission is the coolest thing I can picture at this point in my life.
But I mean, also going from where you were, right? Because you're always a great athlete. You were always crazy strong, and you always had like an engine, right? Like I think that was something that you would agree that was something you always kind of had. You had that motor to be able to pick up and go and repeat and go and repeat. But I think it's fascinating to see literally what a 180 you made.
Mm,
Like you were your body comp at one point. I mean, your body comp.
wasn't good.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, listen, but again, that engine was there. So I think everyone, and you had muscle, so everyone had that level of respect for you, and you had obviously brains, right? But to see someone, to see someone who has that taking their body from like somewhat of a powerlifter, strongman body, I think it's fair to say,
Wasn't even, it was, I was just fat at a certain point.
right? You said that, I didn't. But
I
now,
got no problem saying it. Like,
now
I
to
remember.
get on stage with you and say, holy shit, like, is he going to be competing in the Masters at the Olympia? Like you start now. 7, 8, 9 years ago, if you told me that, I'd be like, is that even one of Pat's focuses? I don't think, is he ever going to get there? I don't know. It's interesting. I always tell people, because they'll ask me, is it 80% nutrition? Is it 20% training? And my answer is it's 100% mental.
Yeah.
I'm just one of these people, like, they're like, kind of give me a look. I'm like, it's 100% mental. I'm just one of these believers that I understand statistically things are going to decline, or they could. Yeah, my goal is to fight it, and my goal is to push, and my goal, like, I'm 47 right now, soon to be 48. I'm in like a serious. I'm in a surplus. You never heard me say that.
No,
I'm in a
I
big
see
time.
those arms right now, and
I'm
yeah.
getting there. I'm in a big time, I'm in a big time strength phase. Like, the goal right now is specific. Get stronger, try and maintain leanness while putting size on. And like, it's hard, man. Like, I went to bed the other night, I was 219, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the biggest I've been since college. And I
Mm,
woke up the next morning and I was 213.8. And then you're like, fuck. You
yeah.
think you're making progress. And then you wake up, you use the bathroom, and you're like, oh my God, I lost, 6 pounds in my sleep. This isn't
Mhm.
easy. Like,
No.
but there's so many lines I stole from you. One of them I use every week. And I wanted you to talk about nutrition a bit. It's all math. This is only
Mm.
math. Like, people are, oh, I'm not hitting my macros, and I'm getting to the evening and I'm like 100 grams of protein off. I'm like, guys, it's just math. No, I'm sorry. It's just math. I stole that from you. You need to
Yeah.
be at 200 grams of carbohydrates. And you're eating 5 times a day. That's 40 grams a meal. If you're eating 4 times a day, it's 50 grams a meal. It's just math. So, like, I would imagine that you think the nutrition piece, I almost feel like the training piece you and I love, and it's like, all right, we push ourselves hard, like, that's enjoyable, right? There's a
Yes.
nutrition piece. Do you agree is probably the most difficult?
Way, way more difficult than training. Way, not even close. It's not even close. Yeah. And it's like, there's just a million little habits that have to get built in, over, like, superimposed on top of each other. And then you have to take those habits and push them through some really hard points where there's a lot of friction. And if you do that for a long time, you will be shocked at the results. But in terms of the difficulty, training is fun. Training
Yeah.
is a break. It is great. I love to train. It's amazing. It's my favorite time of the day. The slog of nutrition is the by far the hardest part.
Yeah, but what were some of the things, like, I feel like nutrition is an evolution, right? Someone was asking me about, when did you start? I told them, well, you were 16. What were you doing? Like, oh, I heard one day you needed protein for muscles to grow. This is 16. So what'd you do?
Mhm.
I remember going to Doremo's Pizza and ordering meatballs and pasta.
Yes.
And out of nowhere, we start eating egg whites. And then we find out, well, the yolk's good. And it's like, there was just this progression, not in the long term, in the short term. Like, you've always been very knowledgeable. I'm curious to hear, in the last 3 years, were there things that you had to really put yourself in check with? Or did you ever find yourself deviating in a certain direction that you realized wasn't the best thing for you? Or talk to me about that.
I mean, my, like, nutrition for me goes back to probably a very similar time as what you're talking about, the beginnings. Like, like starting to lift weights around 14, 15, looking at the athletes that I wanted to be like, the pro baseball players of the mid 90s, where it's like, I clearly have to be jacked or I will not be in the major leagues. Unbeknownst to me, I just didn't know, but
None of
uh,
us did.
so it was like, all right, well, and that point was the ESPN shows and also like bodybuilding magazines. That was the only source of information. So yeah, it was like protein, 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 and like spaghetti was sort of the thing. And like I used to just cook the whole box of spaghetti and eat that for dinner. Um, and I worked summer jobs on Cape Cod, so like a lot of the like miniature golf course and then like batting cages, bumper boat sort of a deal. But we also had the Cape Cod League there,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we would have the Cape Cod League players. Part of their deal was they lived with the host family and they worked a job during the day. So I worked with these guys. You know what I mean? Like it would be me at like 15 sitting next to some dude that was in the Cape League that was like a 22-year-old or something like
Yeah,
that.
seriously.
And you know, just picking their brain about baseball and like these guys were jacked too. Like they were all jacked. They got all the girls. They, you know, they were like local superstars that rolled into town every summer. And it was like, okay, well, there's the template for what I need to be. And hanging out, like just eating lunch and like hearing what they're gonna order, and like, all right, I'm gonna order the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that those dudes, like we had a bunch of restaurants around us. We had A&W, we had a place called George's Pizza, we had Seafood Sam's, and that was like kind of the trio. All right. So it was like for like the one dude would order spaghetti and meatballs and a small pepperoni pizza for one meal. So I ordered spaghetti meatballs and a pepperoni pizza for one meal. I'd force that all of that food down. Or it was the triple cheeseburger from A&W with the curly fries with the chili and cheese on it. Okay. And I'm eating all, if that guy's eating it, I'm eating it.
I'll eat
So,
it.
you know, like those are some of the early experiences. And then fast forward to mixed martial arts. You know, that's when I really had to learn like to diet down for something, to make weight. And I trained with a lot of guys that were very good fighters that fought in the UFC. And these guys were animals. This was late 90s, early 2000s. The only advice was don't eat carbs. That's it, you know? So it was like I ate tuna fish with salad with Greek dressing for 3 meals a day. And that was it. And you can say right or wrong. I always made weight and I trained 7 days a week and I tried to train like these guys were nuts. You know what I mean? They would get up and run at the Harvard Stadium at 6 a.m. 5 times a week. And they would run all the bleachers. They would run up the bolts and come down the bolts and do that whole thing. And that's a big stadium. And it would take about an hour and a half to run the bleachers. And then they would go to work all day and then we would meet up and train after work after that for like 2 hours of training and on no carbs. Like these guys just didn't eat carbs. So I didn't eat carbs. You know, fast forward to strongman, where again, it was like trying to make weight. And at that point, like I actually listened to a ton of Rob Wolf. I don't know if you've ever really like gotten into his stuff or listened to him, but he is like super smart PhD guy that's like the paleo diet PhD dude, you
Right.
know? And so he is very convincing. He's got a lot of great information. I went pure paleo at that time. So it was just like sweet potatoes for like pretty much every meal, meat, like the whole thing. Um, you know, and then like after strongman, like I moved to New York, strongman kind of ended, and then I got married and I didn't really care about nutrition. I was just sort of like lifting and eating and having a good time. And that led me to just reaching like 235 pounds of like fluff. And yeah, that was where it was like I started seeing online. Like I remember the first time I saw someone comment on one of my posts and call me Fat Davidson. And I remember going to work and Marcos busting my balls about how fat I was getting. And some of the other guys like Seth, like you know, he'll get in there, he'll throw some 1-2s. All those dudes, Luke, Vinny. Vinny started calling me Patty Mayonnaise, and I was like, dude, these guys are killing me. But you
Yeah.
know what? Like, I'm glad they did. They were just like being real with me. They were like, dude, you're
It's your
like,
mindset. It puts you on a trajectory, you know?
and I was like, guys, you have no idea. I will get in better shape than every single one of you. I've
Yeah.
been in better shape than every single one of you at certain points in my life, and I will do it again. And I remember them laughing at me over that. And I was like, you guys have no idea who you're talking to. No idea. Like, watch, watch. And so I started on the RP diet right around the time when COVID was starting.
Israel.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever measured anything. ever weighed food, ever like had a macro based approach, that was the most eye-opening thing for me of anything. Weighing
Right.
stuff. And like I had at that point known, for me, training is just a big spreadsheet. How many yards are you running at a certain velocity? How much load are you moving? Blah, blah, blah. It's just a big Excel sheet in the sky to me. And and then it was like, oh, huh, shocker. Food is the same thing. It's just a big Excel sheet, and that Excel sheet over time pushes you in directions. And yeah, I read the Renaissance Periodization Diet 2.0 book, and it's such a good book. And Mike Israetel's nutrition information is so clear
Oh,
and
he's
good,
brilliant. He's brilliant. Yeah, his stuff's
you
brilliant.
know.
He is. He's fantastic.
And that's what I mean. Like, I literally just followed the RP diet for like, I think 3 years, and landed in a place of like kind of training, a lot of sprint training that I learned from Derek, and following the RP diet. And I looked at myself and I was like, I'm in the best shape of my entire life. Like, I didn't even, and it wasn't as hard as all the hard things that I had done before in terms of paleo or no carb stuff as a teenager trying to make weight for mixed martial arts, you know. But I will say, when you take the measured macro approach and then drive it to its extremes with bodybuilding, that's, that's where the rubber really meets the road. Like, I don't think anybody in bodybuilding is using any other approach than measuring, with macros and food scales.
Well,
It's
I'm glad you went there. I'm glad you actually brought that up. That was ironically what I was going to try and segue us into. There's a lot of conflicting advice out there nowadays. You're looking at the 25-year-old woman who's always had a great physique, and she's talking about intuitive eating, right? And then you have another woman right next to her who weighs, over 300 pounds, and she's like, "Well, I'm intuitively eating, and I can't seem to." It's the truth, though. I'm a bit tired of it because macros gets shit on a lot, and my attitude is this is completely removing any guesswork. If you're 6'3" and 225 pounds and you walk around all the time at 6% body fat and you haven't been measuring and you are like, yeah, damn man, I'm in a good place, then knock yourself out, bro. I'm not telling you need to do anything else. But for the majority of our population out there who are like, they really don't know. They're like, well, I eat healthy. I'm like, you eat healthy, but let's add up like how much protein, how much carbs, how much fat, how much fiber, right? Like no one's ever talking, no one's talking about fiber. And when they start looking at these numbers, then I mean, 99% of the time, it. They're like, well, wow, I didn't realize I was that far off. And it was
Yeah.
eye-opening to you. And
I love when Lane Norton talks about it from the perspective of like finances, where he's like, look, like, yeah, I get that people get all hung up on weighing their food and measuring things and counting macros or calories. But like, well, what if you're just looking at your own personal finances or your business finances? Are you not going to like put it all down and figure out where your expenses are and where your income is and compare? Because that's going to tell you whether or not you're gaining or losing money. I guess you could not do that and just sort of be like, oh, well, how much money do I have? I should check. Oh, I've got a lot of money. Cool. Or like, oh, no, I'm totally broke. But like, you're probably better off having some accounting of your finances. And it's literally no different with food. Like, it is ultimately like the end result is calories in, calories out. You're gaining, you're losing, you're staying the same. And yeah, there's measuring errors. There's going to be measuring errors with your finances too. Like, you're going to miss some things, but overall, you're probably going to be more likely to go in the financial direction that you want to go in if you're taking account of it and putting it down on a spreadsheet and measuring it. And you're probably more likely to have the body comp results that you want if you start weighing it, measuring it, and everything else. And like, I almost think of it like, hey, if I went into the gym and I just like had a blindfold on and grabbed random dumbbells and
yeah,
started moving them,
great
I
example.
could get some kind of a response, but I'd probably be better off if I opened my eyes and actually picked up the ones that I know what they weigh and compare the number of reps that I got last time with those ones to the number I get this time, and I see the direction that I'm going. And the other, like the last thing, I think Mike Israetel said this. It might have been Lane Norton or Mike Israetel. Those guys are both amazing. They both say a ton of incredible things around food. But it was like, whether you know it or not, you are measuring your food in some way, shape, or form. A lot of the times, it's literally just your eyeballs comparing how much food is on the plate compared to the size of the plate. And you might, like, that is a measurement. You're evaluating how much is there. It's just that it's not as accurate a measurement tool as a scale. So we're all measuring it. People will tell it to you in the way that they speak. Oh, I had a lot of this thing.
Yeah, you're like, okay, what does that mean? Yeah.
So it's always like some level of evaluating quantity. It's just, what's the precision of your measuring tool?
I think what throws a lot of people off too is, they might be eating a lot of the right stuff, but when they start getting inconsistent with tracking, you see this happen I see it happen with so many people. The food doesn't change, right? Like we're all gonna, very rarely is someone gonna be living like a healthy lifestyle and then suddenly start eating pizza 3 times a day. It's just like you feel good. It's what you are used to doing, yada, yada, yada. What I've noticed though is those meals start coming out a Tuesday, a Friday, a Sunday, and maybe the frequency of 5 times goes to 3 times. And then when you add up the calories over time and you factor in that average, you start seeing that total number starts dropping well below your total daily energy expenditure. And then, people wonder why, well, my energy's not there. Sleep's getting affected a bit. My aura is reading wrong. My resiliency category is dropping. Well, what have you trained with nutrition? Nothing. I eat the same foods. I'm like, wait a second. It's not like, are you measuring every day? Well, are you keeping up the frequency from your good days? Well, and then like the truth comes out. And then when you peel back the layers and you show it to them, even people that are advanced, I'm like, you know better. And they're like, holy shit, it's just a reminder. You got to stay on this stuff,
I think bodybuilding points this out really effectively. And, a guy that I follow that I get a tremendous amount of great info from is John Jewett. And he's got his J3U university. Like, I can't wait to actually dive into like his coursework, because just the free stuff he puts out on social media is great. But, I've gained like a really good framework for approaching the different phases of bodybuilding. And people think that there's just gaining or losing, and that's really not the case. Like the most obvious is the gaining and the losing. The losing is the prep diet and like just dieting yourself down to as lean as you can get, as dry as you can get, stage ready, look like an anatomy chart. And the gaining is like the true off season where, yeah, you're looking to put on as much muscle tissue as possible. But really, there's kind of these like no man land zones as well. And I'm in one right now, which is the post show period, which is usually like about 6 to 9 weeks, give or take, after the show, where you're kind of in this place where you've accumulated so much fatigue and stress during prep that it's probably not the best time to just aggressively try to add muscle tissue. Like, the other thing is that psychologically, you're going to want to eat your face off, because you've been deprived of food. You're so hungry. And like, if you look at semi-starvation diet data and research, like, people eat like crazy after they've been deprived severely of food. High level bodybuilding in this time is restraint is the key in this period of time. You only really want to be shooting for about a pound of weight gain per week after the show for the first like 8 weeks. Okay. It's really hard to do.
That's hard.
It's unbelievably hard. Otherwise, but if you just like gorge, you blow up, you swell up, you get all this fluid retention. No matter what, like, there's always a ratio of how much of your surplus is going to go towards muscle, how much is going to go towards fat. it's going to be too much of a surplus. Like, first of all, you just got used to a severely low calorie diet, and people all of a sudden bomb and eat and eat and eat right after the show. And it's like it's the same thing as like training load management, where it's like people go from a trough to this spike, and that's where injuries happen with, overuse things. It's the same thing here. Like, you've been in a nutrition trough, and then all of a sudden you go into this ridiculous spike, and the transition is way too aggressive, way too hard. It's just like good periodization with coaching. You don't want abrupt, rough transitions. You want it to be smooth and fluid and seamless, and almost like the athlete doesn't notice that anything has changed. So, man, this is the hard part. This is really the super, super hard part of, I know you're hungry. I know all you want to do is eat your face off. There's no show coming up anytime soon. But please, like, keep all the good habits that you just had. You were just walking 15,000 steps a day. You were doing cardio for an hour a day. You were lifting weights. You were super focused on a great diet. Vegetables were in there every meal. Fruit was in there. Like, all of the boxes that are great for you were being checked consistently every single day. Do not go off the rails. Do not try to, gain all of your off-season weight in one day. So where I'm going with this is, if you've gone through a bodybuilding prep, you're probably a super disciplined person. You're somebody that cares to the highest degree. And consistently, the biggest mistake that bodybuilding and physique athletes make is they go off the rails right after the prep, right after the contest, off the rails, because the emotion and the food drive and the difficulties of dealing with deprivation overwhelm you, and you just can't. And then you have the one little thing, and the dam breaks and the flood comes in. So if you're talking about the most disciplined population around food you can find doing
Yeah.
that, what do you think is going to happen for regular people?
Yeah. And I
It's
think most regular people aren't I'm sure they're listening and not understanding is that the reason why you got to be so careful is because you were in a deficit and you were so dry on stage and so depleted. I saw one of my old bosses back in 2001. He competed in, I think, the NPC Easterns,
Yep.
um, won that show, and he ended up, I think, in 36 hours, you're gonna laugh, and it was a real number, but he gained over 30 pounds back.
Oh, I
He
believe
went,
it.
he went to Cheesecake Factory, and he literally, I think he was eating lunch I think he sat there from lunch to dinner just eating, and he got himself sick. And it's just,
Yep.
that's what I think a lot of people listening right now, that's what Pat's referring to. It's so easy now, um, to just start eating and start drawing back in that water, and then the next thing you know, he's going to look like a blowfish. Pat, I mean, we could continue this for 5 hours, but I mean, do me a
Yeah.
favor. What's next for you, and where can people find you? Because I think everyone listening, I want them to follow you and watch your journey, because I know you're going to do big things.
Yeah, man. Well, I am part of a project starting up a new gym in the city. Super excited about it. It's going to be on 57th in Madison, and kind of like a longevity focus. So very cool with like people like Peter Attia in the medical community, Gabrielle Lyon, like, having this focus coming from the medical world on realizing that aerobic fitness, muscular strength, how critically important this is from a health perspective, from a mortality and morbidity perspective, from a quality of life perspective. I mean, this is just the beginning of like that medical model 3.0 drive. And so I'm very excited about what we're planning on doing there, and like, to be great equipment, great staff, great group. And I'm just like kind of pumped to be back in the in-person world as well. Like, I've been away from it for over 3 years now, New York City fitness scene, and it took something pretty special to drag me back in. So that's going to be a big part of my life coming up. And but I'm going to be really driving the bodybuilding competition part as well. Like, I've I kind of forgot how much I like competing. you know, like it's one thing to kind of compete with your buddies and local stuff, but like this is like a real, you know, internationally sanctioned competition environment where there's people from all over the world that are training their asses off, nutrition, pushing that as hard as they can go. Like, you know, you go to a bodybuilding show and every single other competitor has just pushed themselves to their absolute limit. You're up against your limit is against their limit. And when you're there, you see it and it's like, boy, like these people went all in on this. And
No
if I'm
joke.
gonna win, holy crap, like that guy just suffered for months to get here. Like, damn, this is hard stuff. Like it's not easy, but that makes it even that much better. So I'm gonna keep pushing that as far as it can go. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of it right now, and I'm excited about that. So work, bodybuilding competition, you know, I'm really enjoying being a father. You know, I really love that part of my life, and just seeing my son kind of develop and grow and getting to know him better and better is just a really, that is becoming so much more important to me constantly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, those are really the big
Those are
three.
big things, man. Those
Yeah.
are big things. So social handles, where can people find you online, website? What do you got?
Everything is going through my Instagram, which is at Dr. Pat Davidson, Dr. period Pat Davidson. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Well, Pat, I'll see you in the city. I mean, listen, we got the holidays coming up. I expect you and Marcos out here. A little
Yeah,
workout.
man. I'm gonna hit you up. I'm gonna get out to the barn one of these next couple of weeks. Probably after Christmas, since there's like such a condensed period between Thanksgiving and Christmas this
It's
year.
a week and a half for Christmas already. We're like, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
That's
I got a
all
lot to do. I got a lot to do before then.
right. Well, listen, brother. Derek, thank you. Pat, as always, man, you're the best. It's always great connecting with you, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Great stuff, Pat.
Thanks.